Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to this explainer, where we're mapping out the hidden mechanics of US intelligence. Today, we're tracing the absolute, incredible evolutionary arc of what is arguably the world's most secretive organization, the Central Intelligence Agency. We're going to look at the raw data, the major historical turning points, and honestly, the jaw-dropping technological leaps that took them from operating in the shadows all the way to the stratosphere.
Now you might be wondering how we're tackling this, and we're actually skipping the traditional agenda today because I really want to start with a massive question. How do you go from a scrappy, amateur group of operatives dropping behind enemy lines in World War II to a globe-spanning apparatus that's deploying advanced algorithms and unmanned drones? It's a huge, sweeping, evolutionary arc, and understanding this transformation is absolutely crucial to grasping modern global power.
Let's get into Section 1, Birth of the Shadow Agency. From post-war rubble to the black budget.
Back in 1947, President Harry Truman realized something pretty terrifying. The U.S. was essentially flying blind to what Stalin was planning in post-war Europe. So, he created the CIA with this highly flexible, kind of vague mandate to fight a silent, global war. But here's the thing, an agency with that kind of unchecked power needs money. A lot of money. Enter the black budget. This is the vast, untraceable funding required to bankroll covert international operations without the public or the enemy ever knowing.
To put that into perspective, look at this number, $685 million. Where did that come from? Well, the Marshall Plan. While American taxpayers thought they were just funding food and infrastructure to rebuild a completely ruined Europe, a secret arrangement actually diverted 5% of those funds directly to the CIA. That is a staggering amount of cash covertly funneled into bribes, funding friendly labor unions, and running massive propaganda campaigns.
Moving on to Section 2, Cash, Coups, and the KGB, the fatal penetration and the coup playbook.
In its early days, despite having that massive war chest, the CIA was actually getting totally outplayed by the Soviet KGB. They were heavily infiltrated and just desperate for a headline victory to prove their competence, and they got it in 1953 in Iran. When Prime Minister Mossadegh nationalized the oil company, the CIA deployed a brand new playbook. First, bribe parliamentarians and the media to spread lies. Second, spark severe economic pressure to create utter chaos. And third, rally loyal military forces for a violent uprising. It worked, but it set a cold, calculated precedent of toppling sovereign governments, a move that was heavily driven by Western oil interests.
Which brings us to Section 3, the Tech and Skies Pivot. Surrendering the ground, conquering the stratosphere.
By the late 50s, the agency realized something important. They just couldn't beat the KGB at the deep-cover human spy game. The KGB relied on human spies with ruthless discipline and literally decades of tradecraft. So the CIA pivoted to what America did best, bleeding-edge technology. They countered with machines, specifically the Lockheed U-2 spy plane. This thing was essentially a satellite with a pilot, totally untouchable by Soviet radar at 70,000 feet, taking hyper-detailed photos from 13 miles up. The CIA basically traded the dangerous ground game for absolute dominance of the skies.
But ground operations certainly didn't stop. Actually, they accelerated into this sheer blur of Cold War shadow wars, toppling Guatemala's president in '54, suffering that humiliating Bay of Pigs failure in Cuba in '61. The brutal Phoenix program tearing apart the Viet Cong from the inside throughout the '60s, pumping millions into destabilizing Chile in '73. The sheer volume of these covert strikes utilized incredibly messy tactics that left permanent, deeply controversial marks on the global stage.
Section 4, Black Budgets and Big Scandals, Moral Quagmires and the Loss of an Enemy.
Going into the 70s and 80s, that relentless single-minded pursuit of stopping communism led the CIA across some deeply forbidden lines. Secret funding fueled massive overreaches that eventually spilled right into public view, which sources widely point to as profound moral quagmires. We're talking about Project MKUltra's mind control experiments on unwitting subjects using LSD, the Iran-Contra affair, secretly selling arms to Iran to illegally fund rebels in Nicaragua, ties to Central American drug traffickers, and the BCCI collapse in 1991, which exposed a massive money laundering machine shared with cartels and dictators. It was this sprawling web of illicit operations, all fueled by that untraceable black budget.
Then, 1991 hits. The Soviet Union collapses. The red flag over the Kremlin comes down. The KGB is just gone. For nearly half a century, the CIA's entire existence, its structure, its budgets, they were all completely defined by fighting the Soviets. So, without the KGB, what is the CIA actually for? The 90s became this very lost period of shrinking budgets, closed overseas stations, and just a profound loss of mission.
Section 5. Terrorism and Drone Warfare, 9/11 and the Invisible Enemy. That lost mission found a tragic new focus on September 11th. The enemy was now fluid, networked, and essentially invisible. This urgent new environment thrust intelligence back to the absolute center of national security. But it also led to one of the most consequential intelligence failures in modern history, the assertion that Iraq was hiding weapons of mass destruction. Sources heavily attribute this to flawed intelligence, bad sources, and intense political momentum. The resulting war completely transformed the agency into a massive theater of operations, totally exploding their funding for surveillance.
And that new funding birthed a very different kind of covert action, the MQ-9 Reaper drone. The CIA realized that traditional special forces raids and car bombs are messy, right? And they risked American lives. But a drone? It can loiter over a target for 24 hours. Its infrared sensors pierce right through the night and clouds. An operator sitting in Nevada can track and strike a target in Pakistan with clinical precision via satellite links. It was this exact patient surveillance technology that ultimately led to the successful 2011 raid on Osama bin Laden's compound.
Section 6. The new digital battlefield. Algorithms, AI, and near-peer threats. Now, killing bin Laden didn't just erase the threat. Terror networks simply splintered and adapted. The CIA realized that in a decentralized world, merely responding to attacks wasn't enough anymore. They had to predict them before they even happened. Enter Silicon Valley and a startup called Palantir. This software is a real game changer. It gulps down an absolute ocean of data, phone calls, travel logs, bank wires, live drone footage, and weaves it all into a single living map. Human analysts could suddenly see invisible patterns they never could have spotted unaided. They could anticipate strikes, completely changing the battlefield from physical geography to pure information.
Think about how radically this arsenal has evolved. The 1947 toolkit was built on suitcases of cash, parachuting agents, and proxy militias. Today, we're talking trillion-dollar defense budgets, AI surveillance, and advanced cyber warfare. The mission on paper is the same, but the raw power is completely unrecognizable. And the target is shifted back to near-peer competitors like China, fighting a silent war over hypersonics, quantum communications, and data. The very same data that flows through all our devices every single day.
So I want to leave you with this thought. We live in an era of maximum complexity. Information spreads instantly, and global systems are deeply interconnected, yet incredibly fragile. In a hyper-connected, AI-driven digital battlefield, could a single intelligence blind spot set off a chain reaction that no one can stop? The CIA has evolved from a scrappy post-war outfit to a digital behemoth, but the stakes have literally never been higher. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and we'll catch you next time.